Episode 6 of The Believers starts with Game, Win, and Deer thinking about how to handle the issue of the amulets. They need a famous monk to bless the items, and their prayers are answered when Monk Dole shows up back at the temple, this time to change his sect. Deer thinks that using him to create a story will boost the sales of the sacred objects since he is famous on social media, and Win asks Deer to talk to him. Meanwhile, Win and Game talk to Ekachai about their idea. He agrees and even helps them with their research. Game helps us answer the lingering question about Win's involvement in the Abbott's collapse case when he asks him about it. Win says that he had gone to his residence to try to negotiate with him and found him lying on the floor. Deer manages to convince Monk Dole to accompany them on the journey to look for sacred objects. Monk Dole does not believe in the objects since he thinks they are meant to pry on the weak, but Deer tells him that some people need to rely on them to enhance their faith and help them through tough times. Monk Dole is back to help the temple and will stay over until his time to make merit is done. Deer and Win leave with Monk Dole and travel to various temples all over Thailand, collecting the sacred objects to make amulets while Game stays behind to help out in the temple. Ekachai thinks there is no need to construct the pavilion and intends to use the money from the sale of amulets to provide scholarships for orphans and enhance job skills for people with disabilities. They start at the Monk Cave in the west, then head to the Wan Plants Temple in the north and Khan Kane in the northeast. Back at the temple, Game is busy with day-to-day operations, and Ekachai has appointed him as the monk's assistant to ease his workflow. An unknown number, probably the creditors, calls Game, but he does not answer. Win offers to drive elsewhere, but Deer turns him down because he apparently cannot drive as far as out of his home's driveway, even though he has a driver's license. Deer asks about the Dharma Pavilion and thinks that they have been using Monk Dole for a while now in their plan, and the least they can do is give him something in return. Win holds that building the pavilion is not their priority, and they almost get into an argument, but the appearance of Monk Dole coming their way makes Deer end the conversation. Their next stop is a hotel next to the ocean in the south. After settling in his room, Monk Dole sees Deer head out to the beach, and he decides to accompany her. They talk, and he tells her about when he was ordained after his parents died poor, when his grandparents took him to the temple to become a monk. Deer notes that he never had the chance to enjoy his teenage years and asks if Dole has any regrets. Dole says there is no need for regrets since it has already happened, and Deer asks if he feels lonely. Deer mentions that his life is quite similar to hers since her mother died when she was young and her father remarried. Sometimes, she feels like she is all alone in this world. Dole takes the chance to offer some teachings about learning to live with oneself. He tells Deer that if she learns to love herself, she can live with loneliness. He adds that some people say they love themselves but cannot stand being alone and constantly look up to other people to give them fulfillment. Win interrupts their chat and asks Deer to join him for a meal. Meanwhile, the detective is at his office looking into the backgrounds of the temple sponsors, and he has a photo of Deer, Game, and Win on his phone. His partner enters his office, and he asks about a commotion outside. He updates us that the chief is transferring to Bangkok. Casually, he mentions that the superiors have all the money before the partner walks out, reminding him to call the officers when he is ready. Deer again brings up the pavilion, saying they need to do something for Monk Dole. Win tells her to wait and that they will look into it after they finish the current predicament. Deer worries that it might not work and wonders how long they will keep doing it. Win asks her to trust him, adding that they will do it until they finish paying the loan. If it does not work out, they will figure something out. The conversation takes Deer back to the day her mother died, and we learn that Win and Deer were neighbors. Win arrives to bring her a meal prepared by her mother and finds Deer holding her mother's arm, and he calls to report the death. He says that Deer's mother had lymphoma. After her death, Deer felt relieved, and she wondered if it was bad karma to feel so, but Win tells her that only she knows what her mother has been through. His mother was a Buddhist, but when she married her father, she followed his religion, making Deer torn between which religious rites to follow for her funeral. The ambulance sirens are heard outside as Wynn comforts Deer in the room. At the end of the episode, the detective approaches Game at the temple. He knows his background and calls him using his family name, saying that it is strange that someone from a well-known family is counting money in a temple. Game seems surprised at first, but he composes himself and responds, saying it is not strange. The episode review. This episode delves into Mond Dole and Deer's experiences with their families. Delving into their past painful experiences gives the characters a more human nature, allowing viewers to continue vouching for them. Unlike Deer, Wynn's perspectives are more straightforward and lack empathy. He is a logical idea person who only focuses on the goal. Will the differences in perspectives regarding the pavilion bring strife between Wynn and Deer? Mond Dole continues to show increased attachment to Deer and Deer, who seems to open up more easily with him than with her friends. The police have come into play, and there is no telling what their involvement will do to the entrepreneur's business plan. Will they investigate the drug case or start looking into other aspects that touch on their income source? Also, why can't Wynn drive? Will they be able to make the next loan installment? If not, how will the creditors react? The tension is rising as we approach episode 7 of The Believers.